Hello, I'm Suzanne Walker, Director of the Indiana Center for the Book. Our state center, like the other centers featured in this video, is an affiliate of the Library of Congress Center for the Book in Washington, D.C. Our mission is to promote books, reading, libraries, and literacy, with a special emphasis on promoting the unique literary heritage of our state. The authors in this video are from the Midwestern region of the United States. Their books were chosen by their affiliate centers for the book to represent their state's literary heritage. These great reads from great places are chosen every year by affiliate centers. You can see the entire list from this year and preceding years at www.read.gov/greatreads. We are so excited to share our authors, and they will also address the theme of this year's National Book Festival, Books Bring Us Together. I hope you enjoy this conversation and consider listening to all the authors in these Great Reads videos. Together, they are a testament to the richness and diversity of our nation's literary creativity.
There are so many conflicts and divisions or harsh words flying around. So with everything just going on in the world and in kids' lives, everyone's lives really, we need to think about peace and the ways that we can try to center our lives around it. So we wrote Peace because we've seen directly the impact of human conflicts on animals, the natural world, and other humans. We wanted to write a book centered on peace that didn't only focus on the human aspect of getting along and fighting for justice, but Esteli Mesa, the illustrator, really made that connection to the natural world and its creatures apparent through her art in our book, Peace.
You know, just to piggyback on what Miranda just said, and the theme that I'm really getting out of this is hope. And for me, hope was the inspiration for this book. And I remain hopeful that we all can peacefully coexist, especially like in Esteli's illustrations where she drew all the animals and showing humans and animals interacting and living peacefully. Yeah, I am always inspired also by the small acts of kindness that we do for each other every single day. And that is represented throughout the book, small acts. Those small acts can leave a lasting impression. And in one of the stanzas in the book, one of the small acts that left a lasting impression on me is like pronouncing your friend's name correctly, because people still struggle to pronounce my name correctly. And for me also, it's important to tell a story like this because I believe like peace comes in many forms. It can be quiet, it can be bold, or it can be snug. And if we make peace a priority, I think that every life form and everything in our universe can benefit from this.
Well, Letters from Space is a unique book for me, a unique write, in that I was working with the publisher Sleeping Bear Press, who did my previous book, A is for Astronaut. So we were seeking ideas, trying to figure out, well, what should we do next? And as we iterated on ideas and thought processes, it turns out it was, the COVID time was coming. And it was kind of serendipitous that we focused on a book that speaks highly toward communication, right? The ability for a person to communicate with someone else through a simple letter. And then when the book was published late in the COVID year, it even made more sense that we had created this simple, fun, educational story based on letters that I would write to various people from the space station down to Earth.
After Aretha Franklin passed away, I thought back to my childhood and the music that was the soundtrack for my formative years. And one of the singers that my father liked was Aretha Franklin. And of course, she was a chart topper. So her music was also on R&B and soul stations, soul radio stations. And so I grew up listening to her music. And when she passed away, it dawned on me that perhaps kids didn't know who she was. And many people did not know the many dimensions of her character, particularly her civil rights activism. And I wanted to paint a holistic portrait of her with RESPECT, Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul. And it's really a riff on the text is really a riff on her hit song Respect, with each spread beginning with a spelled out hyphenated word that ends in a letter of the alphabet that has the long E sound. So T, D, P, so on and so forth. And the spelled out hyphenated words, they really act as signposts along her journey from the church choir to international fame.
When I wrote this story, I was going through something really sad. It was really hard for me. It was a mixture of trauma and grief. And before that experience of mine, when another friend would go through something sad, I didn't really know how to support that friend. And it was through my experience that, if any of you who are watching right now have gone through something really hard, it's hard to articulate what's going on. There's a lot of feelings. It's not just sadness. There's anger. There's confusion. And all when you're experiencing this, life is still going on. You still have to go to work. You still have to go to school, even as an adult, even as a child. And through my experience, all my friends showed me all these different ways to be supported when you're sad. One friend would bring me mangoes once in a while. Another friend would see me, and she almost saw right through me when I was like, I'm fine, there's nothing wrong. And she would say, I'm gonna give you a hug right now. And there's friends who just go on walks and listen. They'd open the door and say, if you want to talk, you can talk. If you don't have to. And so I wrote this book as a guide for those who are having friends who are going through that sadness, for those who are going through that sadness, and as a story of gratitude for the friends who showed me that means of support.
My name is David La Rochelle.
And my name is Mike Wanutka.
And we're authors and illustrators from Minnesota. And we're talking about our book, How to Apologize. And I'm the author of the book.
And I am the illustrator.
Sometimes you know exactly where you come up with the idea for a book. And there are other times when I have absolutely no idea where I got the inspiration. For How to Apologize, I know the exact moment that I came up with it. I was seeing a counselor, and we were on this day talking about apologizing. And my counselor told me, when you apologize, you should do two things. You should say you're sorry for what you did, and then two, if possible, try to fix the mistake. Pretty simple. And after that conversation, I started paying attention to and listening to people apologize. And one thing I noticed right away, very quickly, is that people are very, very bad about apologizing. And I will say that I am as well too. People instead of apologize, they'll do one of two things. First of all, they will make excuses instead of apologizing. I'm sorry, but, or the other thing that people will do is they will say that they are sorry for how you feel. I'm sorry you feel bad about what. Yeah. I was thinking about that, and then I started to make a list of just simple rules for apologizing. I'm always trying to think of book ideas for kids. And I knew that this would make a really lousy book, just a list of rules to apologize for kids. But then I got the good idea that to take these simple rules and perhaps have them illustrated with animals acting them out in very, very funny ways. And that, Mike, is where you came in, because I knew right away from the start that you would be the perfect illustrator to take these rules and help interpret them in fun ways. And that was where the idea for the book came from.
Yeah, well, I'm very thankful you thought of me, David, to be the illustrator. And this is a follow-up, but and you kind of answered it, but why was it important to you to tell this story? You kind of answered that with what you just said, but is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, other than I think it's a really important skill to be able to apologize well. And we really don't teach it to people, or at least not very often. Maybe they do in schools now, but I never got a lesson on apologizing. So I think it's a handy reminder for everyone, no matter what age you are, for sure.
Because I love just, the title of the quote they have, books bring us together. And for me, that theme, books bring us together, means that books are gateways or portals into another experience, someone else's experience. And that has the power to transform lives for the better, my life, as well as those all around me. And my hope is that peace, or the idea of peace, or peace as a concept, is something that can bring us together if we work towards it and make it a priority. When we are at peace, like I said earlier, our planet benefits. And I remain hopeful that our readers will be inspired to seek peace always. Just remember, you are never too young or never too old to think about peace and make it a center of your life.
So as a family whose roots hail from very different parts of the globe coming together, this theme that you have here is very central to our lives. And picture books, which Peace is a picture book, is also quite literally a collaboration. It's an art form that brings creators together. You've got illustrators, writers, 2 writers on this project. You've got art directors, and picture books, when they're finished, like Peace, they're read aloud between a trusted grown-up and a kid, or a beloved family member, or a whole classroom. Sometimes it's a collaborative thing in and of itself. So being that it's on the subject of peace, which is quite literally an exploration of things that bring us together, and it being a picture book, which is meant to be something that is shared together, I really think that this book embodies the theme of books bringing us together. And it released in already 3 different languages. And if you open the front cover of Peace, you'll already see more than 24 languages represented with the word peace on the universal peace tree. So I think that our book really embodies the theme, and we're so honored that it was chosen for this theme.
Communicating with kids in this day and age is incredibly important. And it's a skill set that needs to be focused on early in a child's life. We've all heard the story of people's inability to present in front of a crowd, right? And then somebody says, well, imagine them all naked and all the nervousness will go away. But kids need that skill set. In order to succeed in life and to do incredible things, we have to be able to communicate. We have to be able to communicate one-on-one. We have to be able to communicate in small groups. We have to be able to communicate in large groups. And the more effective someone's platform skills are, the more effective they will be in communicating and selling their ideas and their thoughts. So I think overall, from the simple premise of writing a letter clearly and with information that's important, but also with a little humor, and it's not a 50-page thing, it's just a short little snapshot of time. I think that's a skill set too. And so this whole thing branches out into the overall ball of communication that is so key in our world today. I mean, right now we have factions that that don't communicate. They just argue with each other. They throw out their idea, and if you don't agree with their idea, they don't listen to you. There's no communication that's going on, and that starts at a low level. And that's why children should be challenged to be good communicators from the time they hit school all the way up until they graduate.
Well, I'm going to look at it on a micro and a macro level. On a micro level, books bring parents and children together, adults and children together. I think the sharing of a book between a child and an adult is a very intimate experience. It's definitely quality time spent, and it instills a lifelong love of reading. Books bring us together in terms of macro. Many of us read the same books. There are common reads in many cities, and books allow us to look at other people's lives, to experience other people's lives, the lives of people who may not look like us, may not come from the same places we come from, vicariously. And when we do that, I think empathy is cultivated. And you need empathy in order to have compassion and to have humanity. And I think in that way, books cultivate empathy and thereby bring us together.
So the theme, books bring us together. Gosh, well, I'm sure that we're all here for the same reasons. Books allow us to learn more about ourselves, to learn more about others, through reading about other people's experiences, through connecting our experiences to different characters in a book. So I've already felt that from a lot of readers who've approached me after reading Jenny May Is Sad. It's been so special to know that people can open up about their grief, their experience, their friend's experience to me, and share how much this book has helped them. Because it's really hard. It's hard to be vulnerable to a stranger about what's going on in your life or someone else's life. And, even if you're a supporter, it's also really hard. You're like, oh man, I really need to support my friends. So yeah, it's been really special to know that this book can bring us together a little bit more.
Well, I think books can bring us together in lots of different ways. But one way that I think books can bring us together, especially for the type of books that you and I create, Mike, is with picture books that we do, reading a picture book with somebody else creates a wonderful bond. It is a great way to make a connection. Man, I have such a happy, fond memory of my dad and I reading the book Fox and Socks together and just laughing till the tears came down our face. And what a great connection that was for us. And I also have great memories of teachers in school reading books to us and making that connection with the teacher and the other kids who were listening to the book. So I think that's a wonderful way for books to connect people. Do you have good memories of hearing books in school, Mike?
I do. Yeah, it's funny. I just talked to my mom this morning, and she ran into our librarian at my elementary school, Mrs. Ausman. And I do remember so fondly, she was a very charismatic librarian. And I just remember the stories she would read to us, often picture books. So I have very good memories. And of course, reading to Franklin and Olivia, my kids, we read a lot of picture books. So.
Well, yeah, you did. You did some great activities with, I remember your battle of the books that you would do. And what a great memory for you and your kids to make together. They're going to remember that for the rest of their life. So yeah, that's one great way that books can bring us together.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Mrs. Osmond wants me to sign Moo for her. So she's 94 years old. Oh yeah, anyway. All right, David. What are your hopes for how to apologize could bring us together?
Yeah, well, a couple of ways. One, I hope that people will share the book with each other. That, you know, parents will share the book with their kids, educators, librarians. Well, I like the librarian you talked about that you had when you were growing up, just sharing with story times. So that's one way I hope our book will bring people together. But the other way that for our book in particular that I hope will bring people together is that apologizing is such an important life skill. I hope it'll teach people of all ages how to apologize a little bit better, because that is being able to apologize sincerely and to do it well is the way that we maintain our relationships with people and we strengthen our relationships, whether it's the people that we really care about, our family, our friends, or whether it's the interactions we have with strangers. So being able to apologize well, hopefully our book can help people do that, is a way just to smooth things out. And hopefully you'll do it with humor. And I think your illustrations are great at doing that. People have said they just laugh at your illustrations. So hopefully that'll bring them together, the joke.
I'll just say one thing about how to apologize. I do find myself, when I apologize, I want to add a reason, but knowing the book, don't make excuses, just apologize. So it's something that it's hard to apologize well. So hopefully people will see the book and learn to apologize better. I agree, totally.
So growing up, my name is Miranda, but a lot of people, that wasn't a very popular name where I grew up and when I grew up. So a lot of people called me Amanda and still do to this day. I get called that a lot. And it made me really not like my name and feel self-conscious about my name. So when Kevin Henkes, another Wisconsin author, released the book Chrysanthemum, I really loved it. It was a significant book for me when it first came out, and I've since learned to absolutely love my name. And I think that comes out on the page in Peace, where Baptiste mentioned earlier, Peace is pronouncing your friend's name correctly, and celebrating people's names and your own name especially, and finding a love for that. So I think that books can really do a long-term number on the inside of your heart.
I think for me, it would be, I would say, the Hardy Boys series or the Nancy Drew series. And the reason why it's so significant, because I grew up in St. Lucia, a really small Caribbean island, and very limited access to resources and information when I was growing up. So as a little kid, I walked to the library it was around 12 miles round trip to a library to get my books to read. And it was a way of me experiencing the world. And your question earlier about, books and what that really means is it gives me that opportunity to be able to sense that world and leave that tiny little village and explore. So it was all about the Nancy Drew books and the Hardy Boys books, because I love a good mystery and I love finding things and searching for things. And I felt connected to a bigger world by reading my books growing up.
When I was a little kid, I was big into Mike Mulligan and his Steam Shovel. That was a classic for me. I loved it. It's hard to describe why, but I will tell you that my copy with my name scribbled in the front cover is now in the hands of my son, who's 26. And I hope that he's able to carry that book safely forward so that he can read it to his kids. But that idea of hard work and then, they worked themselves into that basement that they dug, but they didn't allow a way for the steam shovel to get out. And oh my gosh, that's a dilemma. Well, that's a problem solving situation, right? And how did they problem solve? They made Mike Mulligan the steam shovel, the furnace for this beautiful new building. So kids are all about problem solving, or should be all about problem solving, right? Another skill set that we need along with communication is you're presented with adversity. How do you deal with that adversity? How do you make a solution that wins for most everyone else, right? And so that was a very a poignant book for me as a kid. I also was big into the Hardy Boys. I was a huge Hardy Boys fan. I read every single book. I tried to get my parents to buy me every single book, and there were so many that it was pretty expensive. But that combination of Frank and Joe Hardy, athletes, scholars, handsome young men with pretty girlfriends, and I mean, it was a different time then. I get that, but that was who I wanted to be. I wanted to be one of those successful young men, and they had everything going for them. They had a great dad with a great job. They were smart. They got involved through all those mysteries and those police cases that their dad was working on, and they always achieved. They always survived. They always outsmarted the enemy, and I just found that to be really, really cool, and I loved that as a young kid.
Instead of sharing a book, I'm going to share the name of a poet whose work I was exposed to. So his poetry was anthologized in collections that I was exposed to as a girl, and the poet is Langston Hughes. Probably the first poem of his that I didn't even know who Langston Hughes was when I read it in the anthology was Little Snail, a nature poem. And so he's not really known for nature poem, but more for poetry set in the African American community and really written in the African American vernacular. And then when I was in 4th grade, we had to memorize the poem I Too. And it was during the civil rights movement. So I really identified with that poem that begins with I am the darker brother and ends with the darker brother sitting at the table with white people. And they saw how beautiful he was, or he was envisioning that moment. So Langston Hughes is definitely not a book, but a poet worthy of note.
So this is where I reveal that I wasn't much of a traditional reader growing up. Reading was really challenging for me. But I read so many comic books, and those are books, right? Now we see like all these graphic novels emerging in the young readers world. But I was a regular reading the funnies. Is that what it's called? The funnies in the newspaper. And Calvin and Hobbes resonated with me as a kid and as I grew up even now. And there are a few things. So being able to delve in, I'm an illustrator first. So being able to see that visual storytelling first, and how that loops in with words and storytelling, that was so special to me. In retrospect, I didn't realize it when I was growing up, but I realize it now. In terms of the storytelling, though, I just related to Calvin so much. He was such an imaginative kid, and he went into new worlds, and he took his friend Hobbes with him. And growing up, I was just on the quiet side. And part of that was because I was really imaginative. I was a little weirdo, and I had all these thoughts that just pulled out of random places in my mind. And I was selective with who I shared that with. It was really cool to just see someone who was like that, who went and was defeating aliens in their backyard, who had their imaginative friend who became quite real to him. And yeah, it was such a great influence on who I am now and how I was able to take that influence into my current career.
I was a troublemaker in grade school. I got into trouble a lot. I was sent to the principal's office many, many times. And one particular time, I wasn't sent to the principal's office. I just was had to stay in for recess. And I remember being in the classroom, and I was the only one in the classroom. And the only thing I could do was read. They had a few books there in the room that I could pick from. And I was a reluctant reader, and I reluctantly picked up a book that looked kind of cool to me, actually. There was a mouse riding a motorcycle. And I thought that looks kind of neat. So I actually started reading it. And I remember so clearly, and I still remember this feeling today because it's still the same feeling I get when I got hooked into that story. It just made a really big impact on me. And that book, just that extremely fond memory of getting sucked into a really good story. And it's, yeah, I still get that feeling. And that was the first time I really had that feeling as a kid, reading on my own, getting hooked into a chapter book like that. So, yeah.
What a powerful thing for that author to have done. And I bet the book was The Mouse on the Motorcycle by Ben.
Yeah. Yes, that's the book, David. You got it. Forgot to mention the title.
Well, very cool. I'm sure Beverly Cleary brought that feeling to a lot of kids. So,
Yeah, no doubt.
what great powers we have as authors and illustrators to be able to get kids excited about reading.
My son was the one who reintroduced me to Voyager Park in De Pere. And it's a place where we both go to fish, to relax, to meditate, and to bond with a diverse group of people while out there just observing nature. And it's a place where we feel like our mental health is well taken care of. And I am grateful that my son reintroduced me to this place. Yesterday, we went out there, and today we are heading back out there again. It is one of the best parks that I have seen. And I know that Wisconsin has tons of parks everywhere, but Voyager Park is my go-to place, my place of choice.
If I have to pick something that I love about Wisconsin, I am going to pick the Bay of Green Bay, which is very, very close to where I live. And I'm very fortunate to get to spend a lot of time each week on the Bay. One of the reasons why the Bay is my favorite is because growing up here, I never saw any pelicans. They weren't here, but they cleaned up the Fox River, which empties into the Bay, and the birds have come back, and several islands. If you take a boat out, you can see a lot of nesting grounds for these birds. So 2 to 3 times a week, I hop on a sailboat, hopefully you can see, and I get to see literally dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of pelicans and other birds that are thriving. And so the Bay is really special, and I love sailing and getting to see sunsets several times a week over the Bay.
Look at the rockets behind me, right? And the airplanes and all that stuff. But I'm going to go with option A. And I'm going to say that Nebraska is incredibly important to me. Not only was I born and raised here, but the people of Nebraska and of my small hometown of Ashland, Nebraska, my teachers, my coaches, my community, my church family, they made me the person that I am today. And that person was blessed to fly in outer space for 167 days total, perform 6 spacewalks, and be currently Nebraska's first and only astronaut.
My favorite thing about Michigan are my memories of childhood trips, family trips to visit family in Kalamazoo and in Benton Harbor. Benton Harbor, of course, we went to the beach, and I can remember when we visited Kalamazoo, our relatives took us to Battle Creek to the Kellogg plant, and I got to sample cereal. So as a kid, I think I had Fruit Loops. I think that was a big thrill. So I've got some really cherished memories of visiting my family in Michigan.
I'm living in Oregon now, but I've visited Ohio so much. I grew up in Ohio. I went to university in Ohio, and my loved ones are in Ohio. So whenever I go back, the loved ones are the first thing that comes to mind. But when I think of a favorite place, I think of Blendon Woods. I knew in my head that Blendon Woods was like a very memorable place to me as a child. But I had the opportunity to bring my husband and one of my nephews there on my last visit this summer. And it was so amazing. It was, they have this awesome natural playground that we got to explore, and they have this scavenger hunt that you can go search around in the woods. And it was just a space to be able to be present with nature, to be curious, and to be able to do that with your loved ones and bring them there with you. And you're like, huh, what path should we take? Or what is that plant? Or what would happen if you, I don't know, if you were a squirrel living in this forest? And they also have this natural area where you can see butterfly habitats, how they grow, what the wildlife is there, to look through a telescope. So it's just that London Woods, along with many of the other parks in the Columbus metropolitan area, just really resonate with me. I do want to add, I love the library as well. It's a must-do activity whenever I visit. So thank you so much, Ohio.
Our motto is the land of 10,000 lakes. And I love all the lakes in our state, but I especially like the smaller lakes. I live in Minneapolis, and within the city limits of Minneapolis, there are a lot of smaller lakes. So my favorite thing about Minneapolis are all those lakes, and I love going for walks around the lakes, biking around the lakes, and my two favorites are Lake Harriet and Lake of the Isles. So that would be my favorite thing about Minnesota, David.
I have a question for you, a follow-up question with that. You talk about, biking and hiking around the lakes. Do you ever do anything on the lakes in winter, since we have such long winters here?
Yeah, I do. I love ice skating, playing hockey. And it's hard because sometimes the lake doesn't freeze over without any snow on it. But every once in a while, it will freeze over with no snow, and it's just beautiful, just glass. So that is a really rare occasion, but it's especially fun to skate on ice that's frozen over without snow on it. Otherwise, you can still skate on it, but you just have to shovel off all the snow. And it's not quite as smooth. So.
Yeah, do your kids do that with you? I don't know that about. Do Franklin and Olivia like to ice skate as well?
They do, yeah. Yep. They both play a little hockey, and so we're not really good at it, but we enjoy going out there.
Well, that sounds like a very Minnesotan thing to do, to play hockey.
Yeah.
I feel like a traitor since I've never played hockey before, but
Yes.
I love our lakes as well. Well, I think maybe that takes care of our questions. So we are pleased to mention our book, How to Apologize, and we're very pleased to be representing our state of Minnesota here.
Yeah. Thank you for listening.